Hi, I'm Craig Eaton, broker-owner of Eaton Realty.
And I'm Rebecca Kelly, the Director of Sales.
And welcome to Home Building 101. Today we want to talk to you about building a brand new home from scratch. This can come in various different sizes, shapes, and forms, but this is for the people that want something their way and they want something brand new. Resale homes are more plentiful, but then you're buying something that somebody's already owned. And for you people that want something fresh, brand new, and to your standards, this webinar is for you.
In today's webinar, you're going to learn how to identify the builder that meets your needs, how financing works with new construction, how to navigate the choices that you're going to have, and how to stay on track and avoid the pitfalls of building new construction.
We're going to break it down into 3 simple steps. First, we're going to explore. Basically, that's going out and finding the home, the location, the builder, and the things that you want in this home. The next thing we're going to do is walk you through building the home and what all that entails. And then the last thing is closing, which might entail financing and the challenges of getting into the home on your own.
Well, step 1 is actually to explore, and this is where I like to start with a big picture and kind of drill down to the nitty-gritty. So we want to consider your needs, your must-haves, your can't live without, your wife's going to kill you if it doesn't include a pool kind of needs. Okay, so we want to consider location, amenities, timeline. We want to include house style, whether it's single family, townhome, condo, and we want to include the floor plan, and we want to take a look at that financing. So we want to keep all of that into consideration when we're thinking about we're starting to explore. And what's that number 1 thing that people say we need to look for first?
Location, and then there's location, and there's location.
Absolutely. So we need to determine first the location that you need to live in. And we can go really big with this. What country do you need to live in? What state do you need to live in? What city, what region, what neighborhood, and what general geographic area? Because that geography is going to drive your decision. For example, if you need to live within 15 minutes of your emergency room job in Tampa, you're not going to be searching for a home in Orlando. It's not going to meet your geographic needs. So number 1, we need to determine the location. So how do you choose where to live? Are you drawn to the convenience of suburbia? Or perhaps you like the quiet calm of a rural area? That's going to be very important. Proximity to work, retail, grocery stores. Do you want your children to walk to school, ride a bike to school, or perhaps they need to be on a local busing route? It's a very important consideration when planning on where to live. So when we think about your needs, location is just one aspect. When we asked on social media, what is the most important factor? The number of amenities in a community or its location? Overwhelmingly, 75% of the respondents said location is the number 1 factor in determining where to live. Another really important thing to consider is timeline. Do you need to be settled in 30 days? 6 months or 2 years. That timeline is critical when trying to determine which type of builder to go with, because they're not all equal and they all have different timelines for when they can deliver the product. Community amenities. How important are they? Or maybe they're not important at all. Recently, I was in North Carolina and we passed by this community, and inside the community was a Jack Nicklaus golf course. And get this, Craig, there was a landing strip complete with control tower for a private plane.
I've seen those advertised. A lot of people don't know I fly RC planes, have done so for about the last 6 years. And there's a flying club south of here, which is really nice. But I get flying magazines, and there's actually subdivisions that have their own RC fields. So that anytime I want, I can take my airplanes out there and fly them on the fields.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Well, you may not need a private plane landing strip or a landing strip for your toys. Maybe a dog park and a playground or a community pool is plenty enough for you, or maybe no amenities at all. Just know that if you choose a community with amenities, a lot of times they're going to come at a cost. So you have a homeowners association or a community development district that you pay into in order to have the privilege of using those amenities.
So the next thing is financing. And basically the fundamentals there, you need to decide what you can afford. Most of these builders, when they build their models, they put some extras in there, which is very nice. But I've had many clients that will go into the building and they say, okay, so how much is this home worth? Or how much would this home cost? And they would say, oh, $250,000. And they go, really? That's very nice. They say, well, now that's for the base model. And so then they don't think to ask, and sometimes I'll prompt them. I'll say, so how much would this model be? And they go, oh, well, this is 3 1/4. So it can vary by $50,000 to $100,000 difference depending on all the upgrades. So it's important that people understand what their budgets are to begin with. Many times you can get pre-qualified or at least talk to a financial person and they can give you some information on that. Many times realtors can help you based on your income and payments that you want to make, show you how much money you can borrow based on the amount of down payment and so forth. The other thing is closing costs with new construction is different than resales. And when you buy a home from somebody else, typically in the state of Florida, the seller pays about 1.5% of the cost to transfer this property as their cost. But in new construction, they take all of those fees and they burden the buyer with those. But then the builders say, however, if you use our lender, we'll pay 1.5% or we'll pay $10,000 towards closing or whatever. And that's a ploy for them to be able to help you, drive you to their lenders, their pre-approved lenders. And of course, the reason for that's a couple. One, primarily, is the builder has a relationship with these lenders and they know the way they work, they can keep on track. They have the right to be able to talk to them and find out if you're on track and they understand what you're trying to accomplish, and if you're qualified is the main thing. The second thing is many times these lenders then will give a fee back. Nobody likes the word kickback, but it's basically of the fees, they give a fee back to the builder, which then the builder in turns will say, use our lender and we're going to give you these monies to help you close the home. So they make it really hard for you to pick another lender. Sometimes if you say, I want to pick my own lender, they'll say, fine, but we're not going to give you the $10,000 towards closing costs, which almost makes it prohibited.
Oh yeah, it can be difficult. So we've talked about the location, we've talked about the timeline, we've talked about the amenities, and of course the all-important financing. But let's talk about the house itself. What type of house do you need? Let's really look at what you need for your family size, for your lifestyle. Is it a single family home? Those are typically non-attached homes where one family per dwelling. You can find those in a variety of sizes and shapes, 1-story and 2-story, and some areas 3. We don't have basements here in Florida very often. You have villas, which are typically low maintenance. They're usually attached, either 1-story or 2-story. Typically the roof and the lawn and the exterior paint may be taken care of by the community association. And then you have townhomes and condos, and typically with those they are no maintenance, which means you're living inside but someone else is taking care of the entire exterior and grounds for you, and those are usually attached as well. They can come in a variety of bedrooms. So once you know whether you want a single family, a townhome, a villa, or a condo, we can go into the builders that you've selected and look at the floor plans. Is there anything more fabulous than walking into a model home?
No, and that's like I said before, these models are designed by professionals to be absolutely perfect. They're not too cluttered, they have the right furniture in the right location. If it's a small room, they use smaller furniture. They have worked these models so they are absolutely perfect because that's what they're selling.
Absolutely. In fact, when you walk into the builder's model, they're actually showing off a lot of their design features inside the home. And it isn't necessarily what you're going to get when you close on the purchase of your home. They're going to put their best backsplashes, their most luxurious granite, the most beautiful carpet and flooring that they can to show you everything that you could put into the home. And oftentimes it's at a much greater price than if you just built that home itself. But without touring the models, you may not be able to ascertain the layout of the home. So it's important that you do go in. It'll help you judge things like the quality of the builder, the variety of materials that you can use, and how the flow works for your family. Builders have different elevations that you can choose from. You ever driven by and seen a house with craftsman columns and stacked stone? You know, those homes, what's called an elevation. And in fact, the home next door that has really neat archways in front might be the exact same floor plan, but it's got a Mediterranean elevation on the front. You actually can choose the elevation of your home with many builders, but sometimes it's at an additional cost.
Of course, unless the house next door has that same elevation.
Yeah, you probably can't copycat your neighbors. There are things that may not be included with the floor plan that you have selected. This is really key. Every builder will have what's called an included features list, and it's going to tell you every single thing that that builder includes at the price that they've quoted you. And if it's not on the list, it's probably not included, so you want to be keen on that. What are some of the things that you've seen that builders don't include?
Many times you've got simple things like ceiling fans, especially on lower priced homes. They won't even put in a light fixture over the dining room table or outside coach lights and things of that nature, just because they say you're going to change in any house and we're not going to waste the money on it. But it just also means they didn't have to buy something for it.
Yeah, what's the #1 appliance you see not included?
Refrigerators.
Yeah. Do you want a refrigerator? Probably, yeah. We're going to either negotiate for one or you're going to want to include that appliance. What surprises me, a lot of builders don't include coach lights. Those are those outdoor lights that are on either side of your garage. A lot of times all you get is a pre-wire and you're going to have to go buy your own coach lights. So definitely something to keep your eye out for. What are some other things that you've seen?
One of the things that you have to certainly take into consideration is what they call lot premiums. A lot of times they might have 1 or 2 lots, and they're usually the lot that's with houses on each side and maybe one behind them, and there's not much room. That's their standard lot, and that's where this house comes. But if you want the one on the corner, or you want the pie-shaped lot, or one on the water, or conservation, I've seen lot premiums $50,000, $75,000.
Oh, absolutely.
That'll change the price of the whole home in a heartbeat.
The whole reason it's called a premium is you're going to pay extra to get it.
Absolutely.
For sure. Absolutely.
So step 2 is building the property. There's actually 3 different types of builders. And there's a truly custom builder, there's semi-custom builders, and then there's spec builders. Spec means just short for speculation, which means basically they go out, they pick the lot, they pick the house, they pick all the furniture or furnishings, and then they'll start building the house. And then you can jump in at any time after that, and depending on how early in the process you get there, you might be able to change the color of the paint. Sometimes you can change the color of the countertops, but keep in mind they order a lot of this stuff way early and they don't want to change it. But let's talk about each one of these individually because they're very different. Custom builders, very rarely does people pick custom builders, true custom builders, because that's when they start with a blank piece of paper and they say, okay, what do you want? And then you start designing, and they use their architects, and they put together floor plans, and there's lots of meetings and back and forth, and you get to pick everything with the house. We actually did a survey on that, and 75% of the people said, I want to pick everything. Until you have to pick everything. And I mean everything. And many times with the true custom builders, you have to go out to this wholesaler to see the countertops. You have to go to this wholesaler to see the cabinetry. And light fixtures, that's a whole day's job of seeing light fixtures, because when you walk in and see 2,000 light fixtures, I guarantee you get overwhelmed. But that's kind of like the agony and the ecstasy of doing it. It's exciting to go do it until you have to do it, and then you realize there's days and days of picking and choosing, and arguments between husbands and wives and everybody else, because everybody's got an opinion on what you should do. So a true custom home will take a lot longer. Typically, a semi-custom home, 6 months, give or take. Custom homes, 1 year, 2 years, depending on the size. And there's a lot of work that has to be done in the beginning for picking out these things, and a lot of the contracts back and forth. Let's say I want a special kind of countertop or something. Well, then the builder's got to go out and get a price for that countertop. And then they put up an estimate, and then they bring it back to you. And you have to approve the estimate. You say, oh, no, that's too much. And they say, well, what else do we have? So you can see this thing could take a long time. Also, custom homes, I usually tell people, start with an extra $20,000 over a semi-custom home just for the right to pick out the stuff.
Wow.
But if you truly want a house that's all yours, then a custom builder is the way to go. But there's not many people that go that length. Most of the time, semi-custom is just good enough.
Oh, okay. Well, let's talk about semi-custom because that's a little bit different. Perhaps you want to choose your floor plan, but you don't necessarily want the agony of choosing every single finish inside the home. You're okay with 4 or 5 choices for the countertop, a handful of choices for your flooring, etc., etc. You can make minor structural changes and minor cosmetic changes to a semi-custom home. So some things to consider. You've got a great floor plan, but one of the things that you can do is maybe you can add French doors to the den, or you could widen the length of sliders across the back of the home. You can make structural changes at the time of contract, but if you make changes further down the line, either you're going to get told no by the builder, or it's going to come at a cost to put in a change order to get that done.
Sometimes builders will say you have to make these choices up early. Simple as a side door out of your garage. Because it's a structural thing, it has to go in with the original permit. Afterwards, if you make those changes, you've got to go back to permitting. And nobody wants that kind of delay of time and money.
Right. Another benefit of a semi-custom home is the fact that you can actually go to their design center, and their design center have people on staff to help you pick and choose the finishes of the home within the palette that you have. So what's really great about this is in that included features that we talked about earlier, they'll tell you you get level 2 granite. So you get to go to the design center and look at the wall of level 2 granite, and if you like something within that, go ahead and select it. You've already paid, it's included in the price. However, if you find and fall in love with that beautiful exotic granite at level 5, you're going to need to add money to design budget to spend over and above what the builder has allotted. And the same goes for flooring, faucets, sinks, appliances, and just about everything outside of the drywall that goes into the home. But with a semi-custom home, remember, you'll have a handful of choices that you can make, and they'll be made typically through a design center.
One of the things when it comes to those extra designs, let's say that the builder's given you $20,000 to use at the design center. If you go over that budget, many times the builder will say, okay, I want 50% of this overage as an additional deposit, and it's non-refundable.
True. So you do need to make your decisions, and you need to make them early. And a lot of times the builder reps and your realtor are really great at telling you what the average amount of money someone spends to finish out that home, so that you don't go too far above and beyond and risk the appraisal value.
Yeah, that's a challenge. I've seen people add 100, 150,000 to the house, and then the appraisal comes back and it doesn't appraise. And the builder says, well, hey, you're the one that added all this extra stuff up, and the only way to make that work is you got to come up with the extra cash. Could be tens of thousands of dollars, and sometimes that's a deal breaker.
Oh yeah, the builders are typically generous with the design budgets, and you can typically finish out a semi-custom home very nicely within that budget. In addition to the design features of a semi-custom home, you also have walkthroughs that are fewer than what you would have with a custom home.
Definitely.
Yeah, so you're going to meet with the builder. You're going to have a pre-construction meeting with the builder where they're going to verify all those structural and changes that you made just to make sure they're building it the way that you have agreed in the contract. Secondly, they're going to do a pre-drywall meeting. So that's when the home is framed and you got all the timbers. You can walk through and look where the electrical outlets are going to be, where your plumbing connections are going to be, where your heating and air conditioning ducts are. And it's also a great time to video so you can see what's behind the walls, and just hold on to that, because once they put that drywall up, you'll never see what's behind those walls again. So that's your great opportunity during the pre-drywall meeting to really get to know the layout of the home and what's behind your walls.
I've done that several times. My son took tons of pictures of all the studs and the location of the ductwork and wiring and so forth, and we've used those pictures numerous times to know, can I feed wire through there, but yet there's a fire block, which is basically a 2x4 going sideways inside of a wall. Well, you can't get wire past it. And had I not known that, I'd have cut a big old hole in the wall and then found out that wasn't going to work. So that's a very good tip.
Sure, and even when hanging pictures, you want to know that you're not drilling into perhaps a plumbing pipe or some air conditioning ducts behind that wall.
I've done that before too.
I'm sure. I'm sure. So after the pre-drywall walkthrough, then you typically have your pre-closing walkthrough. And here you're going to basically carry that roll of blue tape with the builder, and you're going to mark the things that are imperfect at that time that maybe still need to be done. They'll call in the trades to come in and touch up the paint, caulk this, straighten that, etc. And then your last walkthrough typically is going to be on the morning of closing, where you'll get to see your finished product before you go sign on the dotted line.
And this walkthrough is important because with new construction, I've seen where walls are crooked, and we've literally said, okay, before you put the drywall on, you need to straighten 2x4s, because 2x4s can actually get bent. And they'll come in and there's ways of fixing it. They actually put a cut in it. They call it a curve cut. And they move the 2x4, then they put another 2x4 beside it. So, but these are things that you've got to do during the process. And if you don't know about these things, the problem is later on, as you said, once that drywall goes on, it's virtually impossible to fix it later on.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we were talking about custom homes before, you mentioned it could take 1 to 2 years. Well, with a semi-custom home, which is a large percentage of the homes in our market are, typically those can be built within 4 to 7 months.
I've actually watched one of our local builders here had a parade of homes, and they decided they wanted to have their model up for the parade of homes, and they took probably a 3,000 square foot home and built it in, take a guess.
How many months?
1.
What?
30 days. I walked in there towards
I don't know if I
end.
want to live in that.
I would not want to be in that house either, because I walked in and was 2 colors of paint on me before I got out of there. I mean, there was trades everywhere, but it can be done if they really want to do it. But typically 6-7 months for an average size home is about the right size.
Absolutely.
Actually, the first month or so is actually done in permitting, because you have to do the permits. So to build the actual house, 4 to 5 months is about all it takes.
Yeah, and since it is a builder and building can be very messy and not a definitive timeline, I usually tell my clients to add 4 weeks to whatever the builder has told you what their target deadline is, because they can't control the permitting process with the county. They can't control the rain or the weather, and sometimes the delivery of the materials may be delayed, or perhaps they ship the wrong cabinets, and so you're always going to want to have a cushion.
And like I said earlier, when we talked about picking out these things, changes later on just really don't happen. If it's a mistake, a builder will just have to eat it and get things fixed. We've seen where people put in the wrong, builders have put in the wrong kitchen. I've seen them where they put in the window in the wrong location, so they had to come out and they moved the window to realize they still moved it in the wrong location and had to move it again.
Oh, goodness.
So, you know, there's a house, a custom home or semi-custom home is the largest, most complex thing ever built outside of a manufacturing company. It's built right there on this piece of property. And you could have 50 different trades in there, all various qualities of experience trying to build this house. And actually the site supervisor is the most important person you want to become friends with.
Well, another thing about semi-custom homes that actually distinguishes from a custom home is you're not going to walk into a custom home neighborhood and pick one off the shelf. No. And a lot of times with semi-custom, the builder may have built a few almost ready or just finished homes that we refer to in the industry as inventory homes. So you may not need to wait the 4 to 7 months to get the semi-custom, but you aren't necessarily picking out the finishes because they've picked out a few relatively common for the era that they have put in the home, and you can just go ahead and move into that one. Or you can build from scratch, like we said, and wait 4 to 7 months for the house that you have gone to the design center and chosen those finishes for to be ready.
And keep in mind, semi-custom, the advantage of that is, as we talked about a design center and so forth, they've narrowed down or they've put into packages all the different finishes and so forth. So that helps the decorating and choices. If you give me 100 different things to choose from, it's overwhelming. But if you give me 4, I can pretty much pick those out. And they've picked the best of the best. They want this to look very nice for both your satisfaction and their product. It makes it easy to sell.
Sure, I've been on a lot of design previews with my customers, and it's a lot of fun to go through that design center.
Yeah,
I just don't want to have to pick them.
Well, I love it because I'm spending somebody else's money, not mine.
Yeah. Okay, so Craig, what if you hate picking out all the finishes? What if the last thing you want to do is go through and touch and feel and choose colors of granite and cabinetry, and you really just want to move in and you don't really mind the palettes? What kind of home would that be?
Well, these are typically what they call speculation or spec homes. And this is where builders love these because it eliminates the buyer altogether through the process, which is time and money. And so basically they pick out the home that fits on that lot. They pick out the elevation they want. They pick out all the finishes, the colors. A lot of times the site agents are very much involved because they're interacting with the public, and the public says, I really like this kitchen. They said, okay, let's make sure we put the mocha kitchen in there with this granite counter. And so they want this thing to be as attractive as what they think most of the public would want. And the advantage is basically it's finished. You walk in, there's no guesswork. Many people can't see blueprints and understand what it's going to look like. So here's a house, this is it. It's like buying a car on a lot. There it is, drive it, it's it. Not picking something that you haven't seen the exact color or anything else. So it's very important to a lot of people just to say, I can't visualize it. I need to see it, smell it, touch it. And then if they like it, they buy it. The spec homes are exciting because you can move in as fast that you can get your financing. Many times the spec homes are totally finished, clean, and ready to go. And if you have cash, as I said, a week or two, and you could actually be in that house.
Definitely. So with the spec homes, you have very few, if any, design choices whatsoever, which could be an advantage based on how you like to pick a home. You're going to have very few walkthroughs. You're really not part of the building process. The builder is building the home, and you get to close on it at the end of the process. And again, the design center choices have been made for you, so you can really just move right in.
So next section we got is contracts. This is something I like because when you're building a home with a builder or buying a home from a builder, there's a reason there's 50 pages to that contract. Most of the time, a lot of these pages are CYAs, meaning somebody had a problem in the past, so they have another form for you to sign to make sure you totally understand it. But let's be honest, how many times has anybody read all 50 pages?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it usually doesn't happen. So there's a lot of trust going on in here, but the contract is still a contract. And there's basically, in these contracts, they were built by the builder and their attorneys. So they're there to protect the builder, not necessarily the buyer. So it's important that you have somebody to look at these contracts, either an agent or maybe possibly an attorney, to explain it. And if you have any questions on anything, please ask. Don't assume anything. One of our agents had a contract with a builder, and the contract said the home would be completed in a reasonable period of time. Well, that's awfully vague. And it came around and bit them because a year later, the house hadn't basically been started. And they keep asking the builder, and the builder said, hey, I've got a reasonable period of time. But basically he was swamped with other homes or had problems or whatever. And so that was a time where we literally had to tell the client, you really need to talk to an attorney.
Sure. Also,
you have contingencies. Contingencies come in several different forms. Contingency means I will do this if this happens. It's contingent upon it. And one of the biggest ones is financing contingency. Obviously, you can't buy the house if you can't get the money, assuming you need financing. So there's a financing contingency, although that's usually worked out earlier because you're going to be working with the financing company right off the bat and giving them all the documents, and they're going to need everything. So they're going to want to know your firstborn, the whole 9 yards, but certainly bank statements, and they're going to do credit and so forth. And as long as you don't do anything silly like go buy a new car.
Oh, how many times has that happened?
Or buy some furniture on layaway, then you should be okay. So there's a tip. Don't finance anything else once you start to build a new house. The second thing is the contingencies is that you may have a home. And so you got one home, so here's the age-old problem. I've already owned this home. How do I get from this home to the new home and not have two loans and so forth? Well, you might say, I'll buy the new home contingent on the closing of this home. Closing means I have a contract, but I still have to close it. And if that deal falls apart, I don't want to be obligated or lose my deposit if I cancel on the other one. The other one is I want a contingency on the sale of my home. Most builders won't entertain that because that puts them totally out of the picture, and it's up to you then to go sell the home first, and that's a lot longer shot. But a lot of times they'll say, we'll do whatever up to drywall. And at drywall, you have to either remove the contingency, or from there on, your deposit is hard, we call it, or non-refundable.
I've seen a lot of builders do a home to sale and then a home to close contingency within a reasonable period of time.
Yeah, we talked about the change orders, and if it's in a semi-custom home, custom home or whatever, they want to know about what it is you make your choices and what it is in the very beginning. They don't want it down the road because that costs them time, and time is money. And so they will burn you. And they say, okay, to have a change order for this $250 thing will cost you $1,000 extra for the change order. Basically what they're saying is, I don't want you to change anything. Because they have production schedules, they have crews lined up, they have 10 different houses they're building. When you throw a wrench into that schedule, it's really difficult for them to recoup on that.
Sure. And those contracts, are they written in the buyer's favor or the builder's favor?
No, obviously those are the builder's favor, and the closing costs that's tied up with those are expensive, and we talked about those earlier, that depending on if you're using their lender or not, it could be a big swing in cash. So you really need to understand those contracts and what you're obligated for.
Absolutely. Well, when you're building a home, whether it's custom, semi-custom, or spec, there is a matter of home inspections. And you actually have a right to have the home inspected by a licensed Florida home inspector. You can do it throughout the process. And if you choose that, you do need to coordinate that with the builder right from the beginning, because most home inspectors will actually inspect that in 4 stages. So they'll come in at that when the slab has been poured, before the drywall goes in, when most of the finishes are in, like your major mechanicals, your plumbing, your electrical, and your ductwork. They're working with the builder and the county to make sure that everything is up to code, so that we catch any imperfections along the way. And then they'll come through in the final and give you a home inspection where they've run the appliances to make sure the disposal is working, etc. If you don't opt for the multiple visit type home inspection, which is going to cost you more because you're getting more work from the inspector, you can still have, just like a resale, a home inspection once the home is complete and before you take occupancy and before you close. So a licensed Florida home inspector will come through and they're going to run the sprinkler, they're going to run the disposal, they're going to run the dishwasher, they're going to turn on all the lights, check all the outlets, walk around the outside, take pictures in the attic. I mean, I've actually seen homes where they left out insulation in between the walls and an inspector had caught it. So the builders are great. The builders are working to meet the county codes. However, at the same time, there can be mistakes. Maybe a trade started when another trade hadn't finished their job yet. So my house in Maryland, as a matter of fact, they went to make a change behind the stove. They never put the ductwork back in.
Really?
Yeah, we were freezing upstairs, but the builders came back, of course, and made it right. But had I had a home inspection prior to move-in, it would have been something that would have been caught early enough that I would have moved into the home and there would have been heat upstairs.
New construction properties all come with a warranty, but the nice part about the inspection part is get it done before you move in. It's kind of certainly not fun to have to move into a home and find out you don't have heat, or you didn't, some electrical outlets aren't working correctly, or the AC's not functioning properly, or whatever. So it is always best to get all this work done.
With respect to insuring your brand new built home, because the home is built to the most modern code, has probably the highest energy efficiency out there, maybe even has a green energy rating on it, the insurance companies are going to give you some great discount points. The type of insurance that you're going to need, basically the lender, if you're financing the property, is going to guide you through that. The most important thing you want to consider is whether or not you're going to need flood insurance on the property per the county flood maps, and again, the lender will help you work through that, but you always want to have homeowners insurance in place.
It's actually a requirement. If you financed it, a bank won't let you purchase the house without the homeowners insurance in place. And what I've found interesting on flood insurance is sometimes, properties are 50 feet above the Gulf of Mexico or whatever flood stage, but that if you've got a pond or you've got a stream close to you, that still would count. So you say, well, I'm not going to have a flood here from high water or storm surge, but many times your house or part of your house can be in a flood zone.
Yeah.
And so it's important to make sure that you understand that. And there is insurance for those things, but that is an added cost.
Sure. So we've explored all of our needs and we drilled everything down to location and floor plan and style of house and neighborhood that we wanted, and then we built it. Let's say we built a semi-custom home. What's step 3, Craig?
Well, the good news is we get to close on this house. We've inspected this house And we're excited now. Everybody's getting amped up to move into their brand new house. They've seen it 2 or 3 times. And so now's the time to get to closing. And now you're going to be working very heavily involved with the title company and your lender, and making sure that they've got everything they need to do to work together to make this thing happen.
Sure.
The first thing you're going to want is a loan approval, and that's different than a pre-qualification, which is assuming that everything is going to be okay. A loan approval is a commitment on the lender that they have the money and they're waiting to give it to the title
So you jump
company.
through all the hoops and you met all the contingencies and you're good to go.
It's done. So there, as you mentioned earlier, you're going to do a final walkthrough, and this is a good time to take your time. And hopefully, if you've got a realtor, they're schooled on this. They've done this multiple times. I like to think that all our realtors do a walkthrough with their clients on at least the final walkthrough, because we have a tendency to know what you can kind of get away with and ask for. Sometimes if you're brand new and you got nobody with you, you see some little bit of paint marks or something, you go, well, you know, I can touch that up. Well, you shouldn't have to do this stuff. This is what the builder should be presenting you with: a perfectly finished house. If the sod's starting to die over here, well, then they need to replace some sod. Sometimes they didn't get water on it soon enough. So this is your last chance to do the cosmetics. There is warranties involved, and that's a good thing with new construction.
Right.
Many times with resale,
It's quite a good selling point.
it is. It's a strong selling point, because with resales, unless you pay for an extra warranty, once you've taken title to it, you own it. It's your
No
baby.
guarantee.
If the air conditioner goes out, it's on you. But builders do have warranties, and typically anywhere from 1 to 2 years. They call it fit and finish, which means that they'll check in with you, or you can call them at any time and say, I've got some cracked tile, I've got a door that's sticking, I've got a receptacle that's not working, and they'll come back out and they'll make these things right. They want to give you a good finished product. All the appliances come with their own manufacturer's warranty. Some of those go from 2 years to 5 years. Air conditioners, compressors, so forth.
Yeah.
And then they have what they call a 210 warranty. And one of the misnomers that I want to make sure that people understand is that the 10-year is a structural warranty. So it covers the structure of the house and the roof. But when you say roof, I think, okay, if I get a leak in 5 years, then they're going to come out and fix my leak. No, they're talking about the structure of the roof, meaning the trusses and the sheeting that's on it, not so much the shingles. If you have a storm and blow some shingles off, that's an insurance claim.
Right.
If you have a little leak or something, a lot of times they'll call that maintenance, so you need to do something. The builders are pretty good, even though it's past their fit and finish and their more stringent warranties. I've seen them still come back at times if you ask them, and they'll do some repairs if there's a leak. But typically, that's a major structural thing. I've only one time have I seen where that warranty came in effect, and it's when an inspector went up and looked at the trusses, and the trusses that were supposed to come together didn't. Or sheeting was on the roof. That's those big 4x8 sheets. It was on the trusses. And I looked up and I saw a whole row of nails, which means there was definitely no nails in that truss. So that whole piece of sheeting wasn't nailed down properly. So those are the things that they would come back and take care of. They also do, they'll treat your house for termites. They'll spray the house and give you certificates on that. And that allows you to have the confidence that they're not going to have termites or anything in the area to start with. But you're still required to pay $100, $200 as a renewal fee every year to have them check that and keep that warranty in place. And as I mentioned, appliances and other warranties that would apply.
Sure. Now that the home is built, what could go wrong?
Well, I could make you a laundry list of things that could go wrong.
Have you ever built a house where nothing went wrong?
No.
No. You know, we built a house from a distance in North Carolina, and it was a custom home. And we were, like I said, at a distance, and we had a neighbor go by and kind of check on what was being built. And would you know, they had put the staircase in backwards, which is really odd. It was going in the wrong direction of the home. And then instead of a single double door, they actually gave me 2 single doors on the home for the garage, which I was never going to be able to pull the truck in and out of that. And so again, what can go wrong? Hey, the builder could build the wrong floor plan, or they could build the flip version of it, or they could miss a structural change that you had to the property. And that is a pitfall of building. You do need to be present, you do need to be somewhat involved, and you do need an advocate on your behalf to make sure that the builder is building what you've agreed upon to actually complete.
I know people are so excited about the new house. They're just in awe, and they're looking at studs and stuff, which are never have done that before. that's when that advocate is really valuable.
Oh, absolutely. And I've got a client right now that's dealing with a semi-custom where the floor is sloped, and I'm talking 1.5 inches from the front of the master bedroom to the back of the master bedroom that hasn't been fixed, and it is a pitfall of building. It's one of those things that got missed during the framing stage, and the builder is making all the remedies and repairs to try to get that floor up and level with the rest of the home. And
it's and roll you out of bed.
You know, it's sure, but you know, we're talking 6-8 months after the build that, you know, we're still working these things out.
Wow.
Crooked walls, sloped floors, missing features in the home. These are all things that can go wrong during the build, and sometimes you feel like your voice isn't enough to get the builder to do what you need them to do. I always recommend that you have an advocate at your side to make sure that we can address these needs as they come up, so they don't become a closing problem. They actually are part of the process, and we get them remedied right when they need to be. And when you close on your home, we're not making warranty claims for things that we could have caught at the beginning.
Well, remember, time is money. So if you've got yourself planned that you're going to close on June 1st, and all of a sudden you see a lot of these problems that have to be handled prior to that, you may not be closing on June 1st. And now you've got the problem of having to live in 2 places at once, or not having a place to live in at all.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about that. So timeline is key. So when I'm working with customers on selecting a home to build, and we look at that timeline, right in the beginning when we did your needs assessment, we talked about what's your timeline. Let's say, unfortunately, there's a little bit of a delay. Maybe you made a change along the way, and now the home isn't ready for another 4 weeks, and you've already leased out your current home. What if the timelines don't match up? That's a scary place to be.
Yeah, and builders are not too empathetic about it. I mean, if they didn't do anything wrong, and they had built this house in the correct period of time, but it was just a few days or something, they're going to tell you, well, you're just going to have to pay to keep the furniture on the truck, and there's temporary stay places or whatever. If there's a major problem with the builder and the builder screwed up, I have seen them actually give maybe some credit or some money towards helping you with temporary housing, but it's not fun. It's a time of stress for everybody.
Oh, absolutely. So we do like to build a cushion, and we do like you to have a temporary housing plan in place, even if it's go ahead and sell your current home and move into a rental for a little while, so that you can easily slide into the new build once it's complete. Definitely timeline can be a pitfall in building new construction. Well, what if your home doesn't sell?
Well, that's back if you have the proper contingencies in place, you're protected. Many times on a resale, we can put deposits down of 1%. So let's say a $300,000 home, you might put a $3,000 deposit.
Sure, sounds reasonable.
What does builders want?
Ooh, like 10%.
Yeah, that's $30,000. So it's a significant amount of money that if you don't perform and do the things you said you were going to do, forget about your personal problems, and the builder hasn't changed much off of it, I've seen them keep that $30,000.
Absolutely.
And, it leaves a lot of sour grapes and people scrambling.
Yeah, definitely. So building in that home to sell contingency and the home to close contingency, and having someone help you advocate through that and get extra time from the builder is essential. You definitely need a cushion when we talk about timelines with builders. What happens if you spend too much at the design center? Can that hurt the transaction?
Well, obviously, if you spend too much, it may not appraise.
Ooh, what does that mean?
Well, then you have a problem. And the builders aren't too sympathetic about that, because you made the choices. They told you what they recommended you spend in extras. The only thing I've ever seen is that basically the buyer has to come up with cash to make up the difference between the appraisal and what you paid for the house, because you're the one that overspent for the house.
Yeah, so the moral of the story is don't overspend for your design center choices, for sure.
Yeah, keep it in check. I mean, and the design center people are very good, and they gave you some guidelines to start with. So I think if you stay within those, you're always fine.
So what do you think? How's the best way to avoid all these pitfalls?
Well, to wrap it up, obviously Eaton Realty is a real estate company, and we're here to help people buy homes, whether they're resales or new construction. Some people think that they don't need a realtor to do a new construction. But the fact is that the realtors there work for the builders, and they're there to help do deals. We don't work for the builders, we work for the actual clients. And so we
work for you.
We work for you. And so our interest is to make sure that you understand everything and that you get what you paid for. Basically, we help you avoid those pitfalls that we talked about earlier. One of the things that people don't understand is that realtors, there's no charge to use a realtor to buy a new home.
What? My services are free to you.
And the builders have actually already built in a fee because 75% of all their deals comes from realtors.
Sure.
And they wouldn't actually not want to pay a realtor for a couple reasons. One, if realtors found out that I'm now competing against the builder and the builder's cutting the price because there's not a realtor, well then why am I going to bring my buyers to that builder? So that would be like cutting off their own nose to spite their face. The second thing is actually more selfish for the builder. If they sell a house at $300,000 with a realtor and have to pay a fee, and then the next person comes in and says, hey, I don't have a realtor, I want you to take the real estate fee out. It still doesn't benefit the builder anymore. They're still going to net the same amount because they'd already built it in there. But then they don't get the appraisal. So the house now is like $290 they sold it for. The next person that buys and has a realtor and they have to pay $300, their appraiser will come out and they'll go look at it and go, well, wait a minute. You just sold this house for $290. I'm not going to give you $300. And as builders, they're always wanting to raise the price, not lower it. So they're not going to want to be discounting beyond what their normal deals would be. But that's also one of the reasons you want to use an agent is because I may have been in there yesterday or one of my agents and we know what kind of deal we got over here so that I can now give the same deal for, they said, well, we're not running that. Okay, but yet you did that. You can do that. We'll make an offer of that. And amazingly, they'll find it out in some way of making that happen.
So is it true you can use a realtor's assistance with both custom, semi-custom, and spec builds?
Yeah, you can use a realtor with anything. Matter of fact, we have people that have a piece of land and they come to us and they say, we want to put a home on this land. And so we say, well, we know builders, good builders that we'll put our reputation on that have done that in the past. And we can represent you with a builder to come out and build a house on the land.
That's
and so
fantastic.
You still have that advocate but to help you through that building process and oversee and give you the advice that could save you tens of thousands. And again, the builders have a referral fee that they pay us, and there's no additional cost to you.
Oh, that's fantastic. As a matter of fact, since you guys were listening along and watching the webinar today, just for that, Eaton Realty will give you $1,000 towards your cash to close, in addition to anything we negotiate with the builder to help get you incentives, just by going to eatonrealty.com/new construction. So log on now and go ahead and get your certificate for $1,000 towards your new construction purchase.
And thank you for listening for this. Feel free to pass this link along to other people that you may know that are thinking about building new construction, and certainly give us a call if we can be of assistance.
Thank you.